All right, guys, in this video, we are going to cover the LBMA versus Moscow World Standard. And I came across a document last night that was just insane. And it basically said that the BRICS nations are calling for a new gold standard that will ultimately bring the true pricing of gold, silver, etc., as well as creating a new algorithm or digital settlement gold for the credibility of this gold standard and utilizing local currencies of the BRICS nations to become comp- comprised of this digital new unit of account. So we're going to dive into first the backstory. What is LBMA? Why is it important? Then get into the Moscow World Standard and what they're doing. And then go into a quick video. And then we'll go into the document that I found. So first off, what is LBMA? Why is it important? Today, we touch upon a topic that many of us precious metal investors are familiar with, the London Bullion Market Association. However, how many of us understand exactly the role they play and why should we take notice of it? Most of us have heard of the term LBMA approved when we invest in physical precious metals. In fact, a common nugget. In fact, a common nugget of wisdom is don't buy if it's not LBMA approved. We will explore what exactly is LBMA approved. So the London Bullion Market Association, LBMA for short, is the preeminent standard-setting body for the global wholesale market for precious metals. They have about 150 members based in over 30 countries, and they encompass every part of the journey in precious metals production. They aim to promote good trading practices and set objective criteria and standards such that physical gold and silver bars can be traded efficiently in the wholesale market. To put it in a nutshell, LBMA works together with industry players to ensure that the bars that are being physically traded meets international standards. So now we can dive into, so this is lbma.org.uk, the Independent Precious Metals Authority. We advance standards for the common good of the global industry. And then you can see the prices of the precious metals here. And yeah, so now let's go into what Russia's looking to do, because they're looking into their own gold standard after they were banned by LBMA. So Russia is proposing its own international standard for precious metals after getting banned by the London Bullion Market Association, and it could have a fixed price in national currencies. The country's finance ministry said it's critical to create the new Moscow World Standard to normalize the functioning of the precious metals industry and have an alternative to the LBMA. So the basis of this new structure will be a new specialized international precious metals brokerage headquartered in Moscow, which will rely on the Moscow World Standard. And they're proposing to fix prices of precious metals in national currencies of key member countries, Brics, or via a new monetary unit, such as the new Brics currency proposed by Vladimir Putin. The price-fixing committee would include central banks and other large banks from the Eurasian Economic Union. Member states of the EEU are Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, and Armenia. The idea would be to make membership attractive to big gold players like China, India, Venezuela, Peru, and South American countries. According to the letter published by the Finance Ministry, the creation of such an organization would quickly destroy the monopoly of the LBMA and ensure the stable development of the precious metals industry in Russia and around the world. So there we go. So the reason why they're looking to do this is because of all the manipulation that happens on the LBMA and COMEX kind of markets. And they're looking to do this because they're about 62% of the global output of gold, or the precious metal sector. They do 62% of the global output. And there's like a battle between the East and West right now. And like the West is in control of LBMA and COMEX. So they have clear motivations to suppress metal prices. And they've been found guilty for doing it numerous times. And you can even see that here. JP Morgan, silver trader, guilty plea, manipulation. Former JP Morgan trader pleads guilty manipulating U.S. metals, etc. So like this has been going on for a while now. That's why we haven't seen gold or silver reach their true price discovery. because of all the manipulation via the derivatives of the precious metals, where they have this manipulation going. So like they'll short sell the paper traded asset, but that doesn't mean that the physical asset is any different of what it really is in true value. So that's why China, Russia are banning the paper trading of gold, and they're setting up, and then they're going away from the LBMA and now creating this Moscow world standard, where they're going to fix these nations' local currencies to this Moscow world standard, or they're going to have a new monetary unit, such as the new Brics currency, to be the way that they fix prices of the precious metals. So now we can go into this video where they touch upon it a little bit. So let's go to that. So we got monetary reset with Brics, IMF. So let's hear it.
And as you say, that big watershed moment happening in February of 2022, when the dollar was really weaponized. And of course, we've seen how the ripple effect there. But given that gold is priced in dollars,
come on. And did you just see that? So they're talking about Swift, and then she says, given the ripple effect there, and then there's like a silence, and then you see that dude smirk. It's like they toy with it, like they know what's good, and then they like drop these subtle breadcrumbs. So let's just watch that quickly again.
And as you say, that big watershed moment happening in February of 2022, when the dollar was really weaponized. And we saw Russia taken off the SWIFT standard. And of course, we've seen how the ripple effect there. But given that gold is priced in dollars, that's obviously not going to be the case for the Moscow gold standard. So the question is, how are they going to be pricing their gold? And one of the solutions out there is to have precious metals prices fixed by the national currencies of the key member countries using the new monetary units, using trade. So, for example, this new Brics currency, which has been proposed by Putin. The Brics, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they're developing a new basket-based reserve currency. The presumption, I understand, is that it will comprise of real, rubles, rupees, renminbi, the rand, and present an alternative to the IMF's special drawing rights. But there's also speculation, Matthew, that the Brics currency will be backed by a basket of commodities, including gold. And that's when, again, this gets very interesting. So how do you see this playing out?
Well, Chris, there's so many levels to that. First of all, it's important to know when we talk about gold and the US dollar, when we talk about the repressed gold price, you have to keep in mind, even this year, gold is only down in terms of US dollars. Other major currencies, developed market currencies, gold is positive to flat for the year. So it's only been a disappointing asset in the US dollar because the US dollar is so strong. As demand for that US dollar shrinks, and as demand for this new system in the Brics system and other emerging market economies rises, I think even priced in US dollars, gold will rise. But the larger question you're asking is, how does this play out in this new world order, this new reset? The IMF has been talking since COVID in 2020. They were already telegraphing a central bank digital currency and a reset, comparing COVID to World War II, when 85 million individuals died and the economies all over the world were ruined. The absolute arrogance of comparing whatever you think of COVID to the devastation of World War II, and any of us living overseas who have family or memories of Europe can certainly say, as frustrating as COVID was, it doesn't compare the IMF's definition of World War II's crisis. But nevertheless, even the IMF said that as we go to a central bank digital currency in the near future, and as we go to a reset, even in their own diagrams, they recognize that part of that new blockchain-based digital currency, which has all kinds of ramifications for personal liberties and privacy and all that, which we want to get into. But even if they go that route, they've admitted that for that new currency to have any credibility, it has to have some partial coverage in real assets. And by that, they need gold, physical gold. Because otherwise, it's just the same music, a different band. It's just another repackaged fiat currency. So as the West and the IMF try to come up with a central bank digital currency, which will not be orderly because China and Russia and the Brics are now going in a totally different direction. Again, this goes from that monopolar to a multipolar or bipolar world, not just in terms of alliances politically, but in terms of currencies and finance and the dollar's hegemony. All this is going to be radically different. I think even with the Moscow gold standard, it's going to be a similar aggregate these different currencies and these Eurasian banks, as it was with the Brics. It'll be very interesting to see how that plays out, because the real and the rand and the rupee are different and have different values, but they're free floating based on economic indicators rather than margin and an LBMA market. It'll be interesting to see how gold is more fairly priced based on the balance sheets and reality of these countries.
Matthew, why would the West and the IMF want to have gold play a role in a central bank digital currency? I get why Russia and this potential Eastern alliance would want that to give legitimacy to a currency, but having gold backed or gold play a role for the West and the IMF, that would nullify that mouse click money that you like to discuss. So would they be forced into that because of the Eastern currency paradigm that's going to be backed by gold? Would that be in response to that? Because I wouldn't see otherwise why they would want to curtail the ability to click and print, as you say.
Well, look, I had teenage children who liked to throw parties whenever I left the house, right? They didn't like a chaperone at the house. And for years, the West and the U.S. in general have loved not having gold as a chaperone. Since 1971, when Nixon welched on the global gold standard, it was a way to have unfettered euphoria with the U.S. dollar in control. They didn't want a gold chaperone. Why would the IMF want to add a chaperone to the party after years of that euphoria? I think it comes down to currency. I mean, it comes down to politics and optics, because when and if it's needed to have a restructuring of the currency system, and again, I'm not talking tomorrow, but when and if that becomes necessary, even the most average investor now has lost faith in central bank optics and doublespeak and fork-tongued excuses. For them to have any kind of credibility, it's going to be like a Western Chapter 13 or Chapter 11. They have to restructure debt. Again, it will never be 100% gold-backed. But whatever that coverage ratio is, whether it's 5%, 10%, or even 20%, that's going to have a massive tailwind for the gold price. But more optically and politically, they know that they can't, again, play this magic trick of saying that the new central bank digital currency is going to somehow be fair when it's backed by nothing but the full faith and credit of the central bank digital currency and the IMF. That's just replacing one bad horse with a bad mule. And it won't really solve the problem, in my opinion.
Well, Matthew, there are those that argue that this is where Bitcoin comes in, that central banks may incorporate Bitcoin into this currency or to create more legitimacy, if you will. Did you see Bitcoin playing a role with gold? Do you see Bitcoin playing any role? Do you see Bitcoin playing a predominant role?
Again, I think people expect as a gold executive for me to just make it a zero-sum argument and poo-poo Bitcoin.
Very big picture, Matthew. As you quite rightly said, every fiat currency has been debased. That is the reality. And as you say, slowly, then suddenly, what is inevitable is not necessarily imminent.
Right.
But I'm going to put you on the spot here. What could be the tipping point that goes from slowly, then suddenly?
Well, it could be the changes in derivative markets as rates rise and derivative markets contract or credit markets contract. I mean, the Federal Loan Officer survey shows that credit is declining. The derivatives market is contracting as interest rates go up. Those are emerging markets who start defaulting on the U.S. dollar because they simply can't stomach. They're stretched too thin to pay back those dollar-denominated debts. So they either default or they look elsewhere. So I think any one of those three could be a tipping point. Then there's always the unknown black swans, a political assassination, a breakout of some horrible extension of this war or something that we can't predict. But the system, the financial system, the banking system, the credit system, the monetary system is so fragile. The known or unknown straws that can break this camel's back or everything. It's like a bubble with a million needles pointing at it. And it's just a question of which one hits it. I can't predict it. I think the risk in the credit markets, I think the risk in the emerging markets, and I think the unsustainability of the U.S. dollar are three obvious factors that can send this tipping point over the edge. The other geopolitical gyrations and movements are like currents in the sea. They're picking the right wave. It's hard to know which one that will be. But to me, it's as inevitable. It's as inevitable. And to time that is impossible. But I don't see how we can avoid this. Again, to use a metaphor, you can't have 18 martinis without a hangover. You can't pretend that you can solve a debt problem with more debt paid for with money created out of nowhere. That has ramifications. And the only thing that the central bankers and policymakers have done is buy votes and buy time with fake money. And I don't know how long that can last. But what scares me the most, historically speaking, in the 1920s in Spain and Germany and even in Italy, you saw what we saw in every moment in history. Whenever you have a country strapped by debt, you first see a financial collapse, a market collapse, a currency collapse. And this goes back to 18th century France, too. It happens every time, even in Batista's Cuba or Venezuela or Argentina. whenever you're debt strapped, you see this financial crisis, you see the currency crisis, you see the social unrest that always follows. And finally, you see extreme political centralization over your individual rights from the extreme left or the extreme right. And that, I think, is what's really scary, is what we're seeing. And again, that's a very political opinion, but there's so much evidence of governments becoming more and more involved in our daily financial lives. A good central bank digital currency is another example, because then you're monitoring your spending. But that's the tip of the iceberg to what we've already seen. I think that political shift to extreme politics and less individual civil liberties and rights and choices is a non-tangible, non-financial consequence of years of living beyond our means and using words rather than math, and using political talk rather than straight talk. I think any population would have respected a government that told them the truth rather than made up stories and excuses. And now we've gone too far. I think the real risk ahead is already being played out since 2020. Less and less freedoms, less and less democracy, less and less natural supply and demand capitalism.
And of course, there's concern that the environmental narrative will be used as a Trojan horse to implement these controls. And we're already seeing some of that. Governments telling people how they can, which cars they can drive and how to what temperature they can set their homes. And when things are digital, it's very easy for governments to control it, especially with the central bank digital currency. So given all of this, and given, as you say, it's...
All right. So right there, laying it down. And now let's dive into the article that I found. And it was from the Rio Times. So news in English from Brazil and Latin America. We know Brazil is a part of Brics. And opinion is Moscow planning a new world standard to destroy Libma's monopoly on precious metals prices? So it talks about towards the end of July, news emerged in the Russian media that Moscow and a number of its Eurasian allies are now reviewing a proposal to create an entirely new trading and pricing infrastructure for the international precious metals to both destroy London and New York's monopoly over global precious metal pricing and to stabilize the Russian gold market. The infrastructure would take the form of a Moscow world standard for precious metals trading akin to the London Good Delivery List of the London Bullion Market Association, the world's leading gold market right now. A new international precious metals exchange, a trading venue headquartered in Moscow, based on the Moscow World Standard and known as the Moscow International Precious Metals Exchange. Then a price fixing committee with price discovery and new precious metals price fixings based on the Moscow World Standard and reference prices derived from the national currencies, participant countries, or new international settlement units. Right there. So let's keep going in, because in it talks about the article will review these developments, explain who has proposed them, explore the wide range of countries that could participate in such a system, and look at the originators' thinking on what gold and other precious metals pricing should be based on. All right, so let's go down. And we can see, according to the EEC spokesman, on July 11th, Sergei Glaziev, Minister for Integration and Macroeconomics of the Eurasian Economic Commission, held a meeting to discuss a proposal to create an international standard for the precious metals market as an alternative to the London Bullion Market Association, and infrastructure for the circulation of tokenized gold and precious metals. Tokenized, so it's based on DLT. And the meeting with Glaziev was attended by experts from the ministries of finance and central banks, national exchanges, producers of precious metals, and other interested organizations of the EAEU states. And now let's keep going. He said it would be expected to send shockwaves through the Western central banks and their bullion bank counterparts. The participants exchanged views, and followed the meeting, the EEC sent letters to the parties' governments with requests to form a position on the issue. And then we got, it is proposed to base the proposed structure on a specialized international precious metals exchange headquartered in Moscow, using the international standard Moscow World Standard. URA refers to the existing global status quo on gold price discovery, which the new Russian exchange and new Moscow World Standard aim to be an alternative to. He launched a discussion on the reform of the international gold market, which the US and the UK now control. To this end, the Russian authorities are discussing the creation of an international precious metals exchange headquartered in Moscow and a new market standard, the Moscow World Standard, as an alternative to the generally recognized London Standard. If the initiative is implemented, the Russian Federation can bypass Western sanction on selling its gold abroad. As part of its work on the exchange, it's proposed to create a price-fixing committee, which will include the central banks of the EU member countries and their largest banks operating in the precious metals market, subject to the application of the Moscow World Standard. So we can keep going on here and see that the largest banks operating in the precious metals market for each country would refer to commercial banks in each respective market in the precious metals market. For Russia, it'd be banks VTB Bank, I can't read that, Sovcom Bank, Sberbank, and Gazprom Bank. And I'm going to save this for after because there was documents about XRP within some of these banks. So now we can keep going. And it says the bet should be placed on fixing prices in the national currencies of the key participating countries or on new units of international settlements, such as the unit settlements proposed by President of Russia within the member countries of the Brics organization. The Russian financial messaging system is open to connecting banks from the 5 Brics countries. The geography of use of the Russian payment system MIR is being expanded. The issue of creating an international reserve currency based on a basket of currencies of other countries is being worked out. So note that while Brics Group currently consists of the 5 countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, other countries recently expressed an interest in joining it. And basically, throughout the Russian media coverage of the Minfer letter to Russian financial sector participants, they stressed the new system's objective is to end the LBMA/COMEX dominance precious metals price discovery. Russia's objective to destroy the LBMA monopoly. They're looking for a reform of the world gold market and propose to deprive London and New York of the monopoly. The Ministry of Finance believed that the creation of a new structure can destroy the monopoly, create an influential international association of participants in the precious metal industry, and ensure the stable development of the industry both in Russia and around the world. And we can go down here and see, here we go. So the biggest key thing here is in April 2022, Glaziev gave an exciting interview to Pepe Escobar about his views on a new global financial system and why, in his opinion, the US dollar-denominated system is destined to fail. Several points stand out regarding the EEA-EU proposal, and here they are. Glaziev refers to preparatory work he and colleagues have done on a new synthetic trading currency based on an index of currencies of participating countries, to which around 20 exchange-traded commodities can be added. Upon this, a monetary unit can be based. Glaziev said that after Russia's reserves in dollars, euros, and pounds and yen were frozen, it is unlikely that any sovereign country will continue accumulating reserves in these currencies. Their immediate replacement is national currencies and gold. The phase of price formation driven by prices at various exchanges denominated in dollars is nearly over. Price formation will now move to national currencies. Following that, the final stage on the new economic order transition will involve creation of a new digital payment currency founded through an international agreement based on principles of transparency, fairness, goodwill, and efficiency. And he expects that the model of such a monetary unit that we develop will play its role at this stage. A currency like this can be issued by a pool of currency reserves of BRIC countries, and the basket can contain an index of prices, main exchange-traded commodities, gold and other precious metals, key industrial metals, hydrocarbons, grain, sugar, as well as water and other natural resources. An independent system of international settlements in the EAU, SCO, and BRICS could eliminate critical dependence on the US-controlled SWIFT system. This currency device representing a basket of currencies and commodities is something that another Sergei Silverstrov of the Russian Securities Council Scientific Council talked about in a July 4, 2022 article by URA. Silverstrov says that the Russians have worked on an algorithm that values a range of commodities in terms of gold and adds commodities to a basket of gold and currencies to produce an intrinsic value for a means of payment. This algorithm is called settlement gold. He said that as a result of Russian ruble and monetization will not be determined by the balance of supply and demand against reserve currencies, and not just by gold either, but a wide range of commodity and currency values produced by domestic producers. It is worth noting that 40% of these valuables are produced in the Russian Federation, 60% in the EU countries, and 80% in the Brics countries. Just in those very countries, some of which are now under sanctions pressure, the ultimate goal is to establish control over resources. And he said we already read that, so we can keep going. In an even more recent interview on August 24th with Russian language Business Daily newspaper, he referred to the proposed Moscow gold standard, Eurasian standard, and the need for Russia to continue to buy gold. It is necessary to replenish for excess reserves or forex reserves, primarily through purchasing gold. The central bank needs to increase activity in this direction and bring the share of gold in the composition of gold reserves to 80%. He remarked that the liquidity of Russian gold under the condition of the West embargo on its purchases is in question. He announced the need to quote Russian gold on world markets. This means you need to introduce your own gold standard, which would be recognized internationally with a gold quotation on the Moscow exchange and can completely eliminate the London exchange. The Eurasian standard must first be agreed with our partners. For example, in the SCO, Russian gold will be pretty liquid on the Asian and global markets in general, regardless of the position of Western countries. At the same time, we can introduce a new international payment and settlement instrument, a stablecoin pegged to gold, and offer it all to Asian countries. In the future, other commodities produced in the SCO countries can be added to gold as collateral for the new world settlement currency. Together with the pool of their foreign exchange reserves, this would become the basis for creating a stable and reliable payment instrument, an alternative to the current ones. He reference here to stablecoin resonates with the reference by the EEC spokesman, where they also discussed the infrastructure for the circulation of tokenized gold and precious metals. There we go. Conclusion. As you dig deeper, what looked like a hastily put together Russian attempt to react against being kicked out of the LBMA suddenly looks like a long-term plan involving the EA, EU, Brics, and the SCO. Following the European gas and electricity price spikes is the Russian precious metal ban another case of Western countries shooting themselves in the foot. Long before the July 11th meeting, National Exchange's precious metal participants was already calling for common exchange markets for goods, including gold. We are over a barrel on Western systems regarding pricing processes and a currency infrastructure. Together, we should not only think about forming the exchange space, but also creating our own pricing system and national currencies. Then talked about countries to increase settlements in national currencies to increase independence and mutual trade. So let's see if there's anything else. So that could spell the end for the fractional reserve system of the LBMA and COMEX, where unlimited synthetic cash settled paper contracts determine international precious metals prices while underpinning Sergei Glaziev's international settlement unit of gold, currencies, and commodities if it ever takes shape. Let's say that again. So that could spell the end of the fractional reserve system of the LBMA and COMEX, where unlimited synthetic cash settled paper contracts determine international precious metals prices while underpinning Sergei Glaziev's international settlement unit of gold, currencies, and commodities if it ever takes shape. The LBMA annual conference takes place in Lisbon this year in the middle of October, while the new Eurasian Economic Commission proposal for a Moscow world standard is not on the official agenda. It will probably be one of the subjects most talked about by conference delegates during coffee breaks. That is, unless the LBMA bans freedom of speech like it banned the Russian refiners and banks. Guys, I don't know about you, but I really have not seen anybody talk about Moscow world standard like to the extent that I'm trying to push it out here, because like I think this is our golden ticket, no pun intended, to knowing how this is going to unfold. I mean, we're talking about everything that this is outlining everything that we've been talking about and hearing about for years now, talking about, well, all these BRICS countries forming an agreement, having their own local currencies launch as central bank digital currencies, forming a new common payment system between them with a new reserve currency, digital unit of account that is backed by commodities with true price discovery of these commodities and used as a settlement gold mechanism. Like, come on. I mean, it doesn't say XRP in here, but like we can take everything that we know and apply it to what we read and speculate like who could be involved. And I mean, like the writing could be on the wall for us. Like, this is something to keep on watch, because if we can get a timeline and get some more information of when this is going to be launched, I think we'll have such an upper edge and upper hand of knowing when the grand finale is going to take place, because this is definitely involved with it, along with the Basel Accords and everything else. They're talking about everything, even in this video, about how it could happen and what's the tipping point for this to happen. The credit markets, bond implosions, the derivatives, etc. Everything that we've been talking about in these past videos are starting now to take shape. And Sberbank, that was listed as one of the banks in there. And I just pulled Sberbank up, and we can just see, even right here, Russia's Sberbank opens Vostro rupee accounts at India branches. So Russia's dominant lender, Sberbank, is offering clients Vostro accounts and rupees at its branches in India, aiming to facilitate clients in carrying out rupee-denominated trade transactions, which are increasing due to Western sanctions. I mean, like, everything's here. So the main provider of rupee ruble settlements, this is another important step in building a reliable and convenient settlement system between countries by Sberbank. Then we could even go to, I think it was the St. Petersburg World International Economic Forum. So like, I don't know if anybody's heard about this, but it's like an equivalent to World Economic Forum. And you can see here, I'm going to click it, and I'm actually going to do, here we go. Like, even just recently, St. Petersburg Economic Forum displays the establishment of a new world order. And if we go down here, it talks about the year before the pandemic. Okay. And now it shows participation in forum shows failure of unilateral U.S. sanctions. Actually, what the United States tried to achieve with its unilateral sanctions was exactly to impede the establishment of this new world order. But the forum has once again displayed that the U.S. steps of using unilateral sanctions as a weapons have failed their target. One of the most important sessions that demonstrated that a new world order is being established was the one titled "A New Form of International Cooperation. How Will Payments Be Made?" And then it keeps going on here, and it talks about solving that problem, pointing out that the Union Pay system, he added that Chinese went a step further, saying to the if you want Chinese tourists, you'll need to transit to and start using the Union Pay system. And it keeps going here. Yeah, I'm going to try to find what I found way back before on the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum page. And I'll try to put that in a follow-up video. But yeah, man, like, this really laid it out to us. The algorithm's called settlement gold, and they're talking about having a tokenized gold exchange and commodities exchange where it could spell the end of the fractional reserve banking system of the LBMA and COMEX, where synthetic cash settled paper contracts determine international precious metals pricing, while at the same time underpinning Sergei Glaziev's international settlement unit of gold, currencies, and commodities. Like, come on, you let me know. Does this kind of shape up to you as far as everything that we've been seeing and hearing for the past years now, as far as this having maybe a role of the transition? Even they said that this could, right at the beginning, they even said here that following that, the final stage on the new economic order transition will involve a creation of a new digital payment currency founded through an international agreement based on principles of transparency, fairness, goodwill, and efficiency. I mean, that screams blockchain distributed ledger technology, but also at the same time, a new digital payment currency. First, the dollar needs to be replaced as a payment currency, then replaced as the world currency. We know that Jim Rickards was the one talking about the payment currency and how that was the most likely scenario to take shape. If I can go to the video, I think if I go to here, I can find it.
standard there. Announced that they're working on some kind of global settlement currency. And I would make the distinction between payment currency. People tend to confuse the two. They tend to talk about the reserve currency status. That's sterling used to be the main reserve currency. It lost its role between 1914 and 1944. But that took 30 years. Now the dollar may be losing its role. That's going to be a slow process. But the payment currency is different. You could use almost anything as a payment currency, assuming the parties agree. So they may come up with an international payment currency backed by a basket of commodities, and they're all commodity producers. You know, Russia has oil, natural gas, Saudi Arabia has oil, Brazil again has oil, but also large agricultural. We're the second largest soybean producer in the world. Africa has enormous mineral outputs, etc. So you go around the membership and see that they've got the potential commodity backing for that. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, is a Central Asian group led by Russia and China, but again, they're attracting new members. They're working on something similar, and others are as well. And friends over in crypto world, I don't think that will be a reserve currency probably ever, but as a medium of exchange, as a payment, it could perform a role. And I lectured about and hypothesized that Russia and China could develop a new digital currency. It could be a cryptocurrency, call it the coin, whatever you like, and use that as a payment mechanism. But all you're really doing with any payment currency is you're keeping score.
So a lot of great things.
There it is, guys. I don't know if that puts the connections together, but let me know in the comments. In the description of this video, if you haven't already, go to my website, get your free accelerator course, as well as join the Discord. We got the automated signals in there, and I'll see you guys in the next video.